So, Casey, as you know, one of the technologies that is fascinating to me right now is the brain-computer interface, or BCI.
That's right.
In fact, it's so fascinating to me that I forced you to try one a few weeks ago, and I think it's safe to say it was not all that impressive.
No, I was willing to go through with it because I've always wanted to see if we could detect any brain activity for you. But afterwards, I thought, I can't do this anymore.
So just to back up, brain-computer interfaces are type of technology that allows you to basically control a computer directly with your brain. And this has been something that obviously science fiction has been talking about, and that scientists have been actually working on for decades. So the company that is perhaps best known in this space is Neuralink, Elon Musk's brain-computer interface company. And I've just been fascinated by this whole area. I made you try one. It was what's called a non-invasive brain-computer interface, which means it's not inside your literal head. It's like a headband that you wear. And it doesn't work that well. The technology was not all that impressive. We didn't end up airing the segment where we tried this thing on because it just wasn't very good. But with Neuralink, the implant, the brain-computer interface, goes literally inside your skull on your brain, and it allows you to control a cursor with your mind.
So I think we should tell people a little bit kind of about like what this thing is and what it looks like, because there are these threads that have electrodes on them that penetrate into the brain, and those electrodes read signals, which then get translated through the Neuralink device. And that's where I've lost the plot. So can you pick it up from there?
Yeah, so it basically translates your electrical activity in your brain into commands to control something on the outside of your body, like a computer or something like that. And for years now, tech companies have been looking at using BCIs to help people who have debilitating conditions like a spinal cord injury or a stroke or some limitation on their mobility. But also, a lot of people in Silicon Valley just talk about this as a potential next step in computing altogether. In the future, some or all of us will have these kind of brain-computer interfaces. And I've even heard people in the AI world say, this is the way we are going to stay ahead of the robots as the AIs get smarter, is that we are going to implant computers in our head that will basically increase our own cognitive capacity. Now, that technology does not exist. It is mostly, just an idea from science fiction. We have no idea whether that would work or not. But this is a big, important technology that a lot of people in tech are excited about. And just over the last few months, we've actually seen one of the clearest views yet into how this might work in a real human.
Yeah, and while you've just spun out some really fantastical sci-fi scenarios, Kevin, what appeals to me about this story is that it is a case of technology helping one person who had something really terrible happen to him. So I want to say up front, very few people have been as critical of Elon Musk as I think the two of us have been on this show in particular. And as hard for me as it is to set aside my personal feelings, particularly about what he did to Twitter, I truly am so inspired by how this technology is helping one person. And I think it is absolutely worth understanding what is this thing that they built and how has it changed the life of at least one individual.
Yeah, so today we have a really special opportunity to talk to the one person on Earth who has actually gotten the Neuralink brain-computer interface implanted in his skull. This man is named Noland Arbaugh, and he now has a computer system about the size of a coin and a bunch of threads with electrodes that connect to his brain that allow him to do things like move a cursor around on a computer with just his mind. And this is a big deal for Noland because for the last 8 years, he's been paralyzed from the shoulders down. He had a freak accident 8 years ago where he suffered a severe spinal cord injury. And so he has been a quadriplegic for the last 8 years. And he volunteered to be patient number one in this Neuralink experience. So today we're going to talk to Noland about what having this Neuralink device in his brain has been like, how it's changed his life, and why he volunteered to risk his body on this unproven new technology.
Let's bring him in.
Noland Arbaugh, welcome to Hard Fork.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, where are we catching you right now? Just describe where you are.
I'm in my house, in my bed. So if you hear any weird noises in the background, it's my bed. I have an air mattress, so it's kind of blowing air through the whole thing all the time.
Got it. Where's home for you?
I'm in Yuma, Arizona.
Cool. So it's been a crazy last few weeks for you. Back in January, Elon Musk announced that the first human patient had been successfully implanted with a Neuralink device, but he didn't say the name. It's only really in the last 2 months that your name has become public, and just the last week or so that you've started to talk more broadly about your experience. What has it been like to be sort of the literal face of this technology?
Yeah, it's been all right. I'm just here trying to get all the information out to as many people as possible. I think it's an amazing technology. I think what's going on in my life and what I foresee the future will hold is worth bringing the whole world along with. So it's been cool, man. I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, I just want to go back to sort of before you got this Neuralink device implanted in your head. What compelled you to register to participate in this extremely, new and untested experiment?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know much about it. My buddy called me up one day and uh, kind of gave me the 5 minute rundown. I wasn't expecting anything to come from it, so I like made a few jokes on my application, and I figured I would never hear back. And then once I did start hearing back, I had to think about it a little bit more seriously. Had very serious, candid conversations with my parents, my friends, and ultimately, when it came down to it, and I was selected. I decided that I just wanted to help. I knew that I wanted to help make it safer for everyone after me, and I knew that I wanted to, try to make a difference in the world, and something I've been trying to do, something I've been looking for 8 years, and this seemed like the perfect opportunity.
Do you remember any of the jokes that you put on your application?
Yeah, yeah. I said I wanted an Iron Man suit. I said that I wouldn't mind being uploaded into the Matrix.
Yeah.
Um, just things like that.
Right on.
One of the truisms that Casey and I have learned in reporting about tech over the past decade is that you never want to try version 1.0, right? It's risky to try the first version of anything because the bugs are still being worked out. Usually there's some rough edges. But you were literally being asked to try version 1.0, not just of a new gadget, but of something that is going to go inside your skull. So was that part of your process of thinking through this? Like, no one has ever had one of these put in their brains before. Maybe I want to let someone else be the first person.
Yeah, it crossed my mind. Something that my buddy and I, the buddy that called me on the phone, we talked about at length was just, this is the worst version of it that's ever going to be in a human. Maybe someone else should go first, and I'll get a better version later on down the road. Or maybe I don't do it at all and wait for it to be on the market to the public, and then I'd get an even better version. But ultimately, I figured that I have a pretty solid foundation with my faith in God, and I just felt like if anyone's going to do it, then I should. I've thought my entire, accident was that I'm glad that it happened to me and no one else I know, because it's just a very hard thing to experience, being a quadriplegic, and I wouldn't ever want any of my friends to have to go through this. So it's just a mindset that I've had forever, and with the Neuralink, it was the same thing. Like, if anything were to go wrong, I would feel terrible if I passed up to wait for a better version and something went wrong to someone else. So I knew that it had to be me.
Your parents are your primary caregivers. What were your conversations with them about doing this?
Yeah, they were really hard for a while. I mean, as a quadriplegic, the only real thing that I have left is my mind, is my brain, is my personality, and it's hard to let someone go in and kind of rummage around up there, especially with something that's never been tested in a human. So one of the things that I mentioned to them was that if I had any sort of brain deficiency afterward, if I was mentally handicapped in any way, that I didn't want them to take care of me anymore, that I wanted them to put me in some sort of home. Because taking care of a quadriplegic is hard enough, but taking care of a quadriplegic with a traumatic brain injury is something that I would never want my parents to do. So I made them agree to that.
Yeah.
Were you nervous, like the night before the operation to install your Neuralink device? What did you find yourself thinking about as you went to bed?
Yeah, I wasn't nervous at all. I was just excited. My buddy and I were sitting around making jokes, just kind of, I don't know, hanging out the night before. I just wanted to get it over with, honestly.
What kind of jokes were they making?
Um, we were planning on releasing some like cyborg related jokes, thinking of things that only I would be allowed to say. Just random like turns of phrases too, like, oh, blew my mind, picking my brain, like things like that. Yeah,
It,
just all sorts.
I'm curious if you had a thought, like, as you were heading into this surgery, of what the first things you wanted to do would be once you had a working brain-computer interface.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big gamer. I wanted to play games. That was one of the big things I wanted to do. I also wanted to be able to read. I mean, there's nothing like being able to hold a book again and the smell and the feel of a paperback book. It's one of my favorite things in the world and something that I've missed for a long time. I can't do that. Um, and so the next best thing is just being able to read in general. I've had to listen to audiobooks for, the last 8 years because I haven't been able to sit in the same position to read a book. And I had no way of like turning pages. I can do it sort of on a Kindle, but I was listening to audiobooks and I don't really like listening to audiobooks, to be honest. Sometimes the narration is terrible. I don't want to throw shade, but I remember reading like an Aragon audiobook, and the voice that the narrator had for the dragon made me turn it off immediately. I was like, this is quite possibly the worst thing I've ever heard in my
It was
life.
Gilbert Gottfried voicing the dragon.
No, that would have been amazing. I would have listened to that on repeat, honestly. No, but just something as simple as that, being able to like, lie in my bed and read a book. Like
Yeah.
there's just something about it. So I was really looking forward to that kind of stuff.
So how was the actual surgery? Was it long? Like, what was the recovery process like? Can you tell us just about the actual
Yeah.
implant?
Yeah, it was super, super quick. We got to the hospital at like 5 a.m. I think I was scheduled for surgery at 7. There was a lot of just getting me ready, getting me in bed. The surgery was supposed to last between like 4 to 6 hours. They were expecting there to be hang-ups. They were expecting, say like the needle on the robot to break. They brought, I think, 20 iterations of that needle in case it broke, and then they had to stop and replace it. And the needle didn't break once. So just everything performed above and beyond what they expected. And so the surgery took under 2 hours. And then I was out of surgery and they prescribed some like pain pills. I didn't take a single one. I don't know. It was just so easy. The worst part was I wasn't able to shower for the first few days because my incision needed to heal. But outside of that, like the recovery process was so easy. Like I didn't feel any pain at all.
Wow. And when you woke up from your surgery, like what was actually different? Did you feel different? And then sort of how long was it before you actually got to like turn on and use the Neuralink device itself?
Yeah. I mean, I had a gnarly scar with some staples in it. I mean, that was pretty freaking sick. Like I was super happy about that. I got some cool pictures. But yeah, I think within, I don't know, like an hour or two after my surgery, they came in and connected me to like a little tablet they had, and I got to
What do you
see
mean
a lot of
connected you? Like literally
yeah.
plug something into your head, or like
No,
what is it,
no,
Bluetooth?
it's a Bluetooth connection. Yeah. So they just wake up the implant with a little coil, like a charging coil, almost like the same thing that you put your phone down on a mat to charge. It's very similar. You just hold something over my head and it wakes up. It's how you charge it as well. I put that in like a hat, and I wear a hat and it charges. Um, and so they woke it up. They connected that to a tablet, and on the screen they just showed a bunch of the channels. The channels are each electrode in my brain, and those electrodes are picking up like neuron firing. And so they showed me say like 8 channels, and I got to see like live, like real time, the neurons firing in my brain, and everyone just kind of freaked out in the hospital room. Everyone started cheering, they were clapping, which was totally unnecessary. It was so awkward, but yeah, it was really, really cool.
Right. I'm so curious, Nolan, about the actual experience of using this Neuralink device, because one of the things that it allows you to do is to control a cursor on a screen as if you were like using a mouse just by thinking. But I've never known like how like when I'm using a computer, I'm not thinking I'm going to place my cursor here. I'm going to click this button. It's just like it's a much more kind of fast twitch sort of unconscious response. I'm curious, when you're trying to control a cursor on a screen, how intently do you have to think about it in order for the cursor to actually react?
I mean, at first, I wasn't very good at it. I was doing what we call like attempted movements. Attempted movements are basically, like I said, all the signals in my brain are still firing. So the threads are implanted in my motor cortex. And so when I attempt to move my hand, those signals are firing, the implant's picking that up, and an algorithm is basically learning what I'm trying to do. And after doing it a certain amount of times, it'll translate that into cursor control in some way or another, and then it'll keep learning. As I was like a week in, maybe 2 weeks in, I just thought to move the cursor in one direction, and it moved. It blew my mind. Like it was so wild. But then over time, it just becomes second nature. It's not like I'm thinking like cursor come over here and like I'm waiting for it to get there or anything. It's very very like I said, intuitive.
And how like fine grained is the control you have over a cursor now? Is it like roughly equivalent to like what it used to be like when you were using a mouse, or is there still a gap there?
I would say it's very similar. I'm not as quick with the cursor as a lot of other people, but I don't think that can't be made up. I think that just comes with a bit more practice and also just a bit more tweaking on the software side. Like this is still very early days, a few months in, and we're already where we're at, which is amazing. I think by the end of my time in this study, whenever that will be, I'll be better than most people with a cursor.
I mean, one of the details that I just love from the initial reporting on your story is that after you got your Neuralink, you played 8 straight hours of the video game Civilization 6. And I just love that because it's like, I imagine that, you had doctors years ago thinking that in theory, if this ever, this brain computer interface thing ever worked, it would allow people to, do more types of creative labor and be more productive at work. And you get this and just immediately start gaming, which I think shows that you just have the heart of a true gamer.
Yeah. I keep telling them that. I keep saying, I'm just so unproductive with this thing. Like, don't you guys like give me more things to do? Like, I would much rather be doing work. And they're like, no, just do what you want to do. That's what we want, is to make you able to play games, to go surf the web and do things that you want. It's not about, what other people believe you should be doing or anything. It's just whatever makes your life better.
Yeah, waste your life like the rest of us.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm no better than any of you guys.
It makes so much sense though, because it's like for what, 8 years you had been deprived of being able to just like use your hands to play games. I love to play video games. Like I play video games myself every week, and I guarantee you that if I had been in your shoes, I absolutely would have been playing Civilization on day 1 too.
Yeah.
Now, is it also true that you played Mario Kart?
I did very early on, maybe a couple weeks in. They hooked me up to a Switch, and that was very like hands-on. They were real time, like tweaking things. Right now, we're working on giving me that capability on my own.
Yeah.
So any day I want, I could just hop in. I think that's pretty close.
That's amazing.
Now, I want to know like how different this is from other assistive technologies that have come before it, because we've had things like eye tracking for computer control before for people who have lost mobility.
Yeah.
So have you tried any other ways of controlling computers before this? And sort of how does this implant stack up to other things that people have been using to do similar things in the past?
Yeah, I've tried it all. From the first few weeks, first few months I was in the hospital after my accident, they had me trying everything. And sure, things have gotten better since then, but they're just not even in the same league as Neuralink. Eye tracking, they're just not as good. A lot of it has to do with, being centered on the screen, making sure that your levels don't change. I have really bad spasms. I'm very spastic. So if I move at all, like my body spasms to the right and I'm off center, then the eye tracker doesn't really work anymore. I've tried other things like a quad stick, and there was a video of a guy, a quadriplegic, who was using a quad stick to play things like Fortnite and stuff. I tried playing like one of the Call of Duty games that come out when after my accident, and I hopped on and tried the campaign, and I think they're storming like the beaches of Normandy, and I didn't even make it off the beach.
Which was
so
unfortunately
real
the case
life.
for so many people.
Yeah,
living on the
exactly.
beach.
I was like,
Yeah.
so it's a very real case.
I was gonna say, no, that
and-
happens to me too when I play team shooters, because I just get my butt kicked by 11-year-olds. So I'm sympathetic.
Yeah, what's your excuse, Roose?
Yeah.
uh, Noland, I want to talk about thread
Mhm,
retraction. This is something that has happened since your surgery. A
mhm,
lot of the threads that connect the Neuralink device to your brain actually started retracting. I saw a figure of that 85% of them had retracted, and this was potentially endangering your ability to use this device. So, talk with us
mhm.
about this and sort of what the first signs you experienced were that something wasn't right.
Yeah, a few weeks in, I just started losing control of the cursor,
Hmm.
is what it comes down to. It would start drifting on me. I would want it to go right and it would go left. I could not get it to go down, things like that. And it just became impossible to use. And then, about a week later, so this was about 3 weeks in, about a week later, they told me that, they had seen some evidence of thread retraction, but I think they had only found out like a day before. They kept me in the loop the whole time. Yeah, so
So they actually
basically,
took a
yeah.
scan of your brain and said it looks like we can see that the
Mm,
threads have retracted.
no, no. So like brain scans won't even show the threads. What they can do is look at um, the electrodes over time and see which electrodes on the threads are sending signals and which ones are sending strong signals or weak signals. And so they can really tell like which threads are, which electrodes are still in my brain. And so right now it's about 15% plus or minus, I think, 5% that are still actively sending like strong signals in my brain.
And do they have any theories about why these threads had come loose?
Yeah, it has to do with how much the human brain moves. Apparently, they had thought that everything they had read, all the surgeons they had talked to, said that the brain moves about 1 millimeter. And then when they implanted everything in my brain, they found that my brain moves actually 3 millimeters. So it's on a scale of 3x what they were expecting.
So obviously this is not like fixing a computer or an iPhone or something where you can
Mm.
just like open it up and fix it. Like the opening up would involve
Mhm.
opening up your
Yeah.
head and your
Yeah.
skull and doing brain surgery on you again. Um, so how did they go about trying to fix this?
Yeah, I offered them to go in, take out the implant, and put in a new one. I was like, if it's going to get me back to peak performance, then that's what I want. If it's going to help me stay in the study, I offered that, and they said, no, we're gonna like stop, take a step back, and see if we can fix this on the software side, which is ultimately what ended up happening. They just tweaked the way that they were recording signals from the threads and from the electrodes, and that ended up working. There were a couple different ways they were recording the neuron spikes in my brain. I mean, there's a ton of information coming from the neurons at all times, and they were trying to interpret those spikes in a certain way. And they had found that the way that we started was the most efficient. But then once all the threads started retracting, they needed to rethink that. And so they switched to a different way of recording those signals. And they found that that was actually much better.
Yeah. And so, like, where are you at now? Like, Neuralink has said that your performance with the device is now better than it was before all of this happened. Does that continue to be the case?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
I'm still getting better too.
Wow.
hmm I'm curious, like some people that I've talked to in the tech community believe that BCIs are going to be a major platform shift, not just for people who are disabled or who lack mobility, but for everyone. And that the next big platform shift may not be people putting computers on their head like with VR. It may be people putting
Yeah.
computers in their head, and eventually we will all be walking around with these brain implants. Based on your experience, do you think that is a plausible future here?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think they're safe. I think the possibilities are endless with this technology. I mean, we're just scratching the surface. I don't know what kind of things people are gonna be able to do with this in 10 years. I don't think anyone really knows. There are applications that we see can be useful, like helping cure paralysis or different motor diseases, helping cure blindness. But once we start getting into all of that, then that begs a lot of other questions. Like, if we can do this, why can't we do even more? And with the AI revolution that we're in right now, like, how can this be applied to all of these pieces of hardware in our brain? I just think we're in for an explosion, like exponential growth in this field, especially now that Neuralink has come out with this. It's going to bring all the other BCIs up, and it's going to push Neuralink to get even better. It's going to be like a new space race, but in the brain.
I'm curious to get a sense of what this has just been like for you were talking earlier. I was really moved when you were talking about just craving the experience of holding a book in your hands again, something that I take for granted. And now, presumably, you've been able to read books, you've been able to play games.
Mm.
What has this done for you emotionally to kind of get access to some of those things that you had been missing out on?
I mean, it's hard to even put into words.
Yeah.
Just this amount of independence that I've been given, it changed my life for the last few months. It's changed my parents' lives. Little things. I mean, very, very little things have made huge differences. Like when I was able to get a drink of water on my own in the middle of the night because I got like a little bottle that stretched across my bed, and allowed me to have drinks in the night. That relieved about 90% of sleepless nights that my parents had. And now with Neuralink, it's even more than that. I'm able to do a lot more on my own than I was never able to do in the last 8 years. And I don't have to wake anyone up in my family to come help me in the middle of the night. I don't have to feel guilty if at 2 a.m. I want to connect and read or listen to an audiobook or play a game or just go on and check my social media or text someone back. I don't have to feel guilty about trying to wake someone up. Um, there's just so much that I'm grateful for being able to do this. And ultimately, I want to use it to help people, find some way to help people. And I'm on the path to doing that. And that's what I've wanted since I was a kid, just to find some way to help people. And after my accident, I didn't think that was ever going to happen. I knew that I could still speak, but I mean, who would want to listen to me speak about, nothing? I had no like life experience to give them. I guess now it's a bit different, but yeah, I don't know. It's been such a huge blessing to me, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Nolan, what have your conversations with Elon Musk been like?
Mm. I haven't had many. I talked to him on like FaceTime right before surgery. I was like, "Hey, thanks for choosing me to do this. I'm really excited, really thankful, really blessed." And he was like, "Yeah, this has been great. Really looking forward to it, making a huge step." And I said, "Let's rock and roll." He was like, "Let's do it," and that was it. And then after surgery, I spoke to him in person. He came to the hospital. I was still pretty drugged up on anesthesia, and I couldn't get his sweet bomber jacket out of my mind. I was just lying in my bed thinking the whole time, "Don't mention his bomber jacket. Don't mention the bomber jacket." Um, but it was cool. I think we have very similar ideals about what this can do for humanity, and you know where we can go from here, and just our drive to help people in that way. I think it's amazing that someone of his caliber has stepped up and stepped into this role for helping people like me. I mean, I never thought anything like this would ever happen to me or to people like me. And to have such a high profile figure say, I'll take that on and I'll fight that, and it's just amazing.
I'm curious what you make of the promises that people like Elon have made for how BCIs could improve in our lifetimes. He did get a little criticism a few years ago for some statements he made at a Neuralink presentation where he suggested that these BCIs could eventually allow blind people to see or give people with spinal cord injuries like the use of their full bodies back. A lot of health experts were very skeptical, and they basically said it's irresponsible to say this stuff given that the science is just nowhere near there yet. And I'm curious how you feel when you hear the kinds of lofty promises about what this technology may be able to do someday. Do you get excited, or do you say like, hey, wait a minute, let's like stick to what the science is capable of now?
No, I'm super excited about it. It gives me and people like me something to hope for. I mean, that once you take away hope, that's the end for most people. And for him to promise something like that, even if it never comes about, it's just the fact that he's trying and he sees it as a possibility. I take that kind of passion to heart. I don't agree with people who say that it's irresponsible. I think it's a reality from my perspective that it's going to happen. probably in my lifetime. And if I'm irresponsible for saying that, then like I'm sorry, but it gives me something to look forward to and gives me something to strive for and to work towards. And maybe I fall short of that, but I'll be damned if I don't give it my all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what's very clear to me about you, Noland, is that you just have like a much higher risk tolerance than I do. Like I get nervous to go to the doctor to get like some little thing, and you here are saying I will volunteer, I will step up to be patient number one for this very severe use of technology. So my hat's off to you for just being willing to put your hand up for it.
Yeah, for real.
Thanks, man.
All right, Nolan. Well, great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your
Dude,
time.
you're awesome. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Hey, that's the end of this clip. If you liked what you saw, head on over to our page and subscribe, and you can get the full podcast. We do a show like this almost every week on tech and the future. Head on over there now and subscribe.